our guest of the studio.
Namaste and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Puneet Amin and today, as you can see, I have the 2017 generation of Duke 390. Now this Duke is standing right next to the first generation Duke 390. That means this video is going to be a comparison video between this and the first generation of Duke 390 along with a review of the 2017 Duke 390. So now let's begin. Now stick till the end of this video as this is going to be a little bit of a lengthy video, plus I'm going to ride both the motorcycles back to back and alongside each other to show you what is the riding ergonomic difference that has been created between these two generations. And also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, make sure to go hit that red subscription button and also hit that bell icon right next to it as I upload videos on bikes, travel, adventure and more. Hence, it's a very exciting YouTube channel. And now, let's get back to the Duke 390s. KTM launched this second generation of Duke 390 in the year 2017. But they were also asking 40,000 rupees more compared to the first generation of Duke 390. Now, whether did it justify the increase in price? Let's find out.
Let's start with styling. The first generation of Duke 390, even though being fast, it had a simple yet sober design with smooth curves and soft edges. Now, this kind of styling is my personal favorite as such design tend to look fresh no matter how old it gets. Let me know your thoughts in the comment box below about this styling. Whereas the new Duke gets a very aggressive styling update with sharp and edgy design language, making it look like it means business. That means I'm here to go fast and attack corner, and that it does very well.
Now coming to the engine and performance of both the motorcycle. Now, if you want to watch a complete review of this first generation Duke 390, I've already uploaded the video on YouTube. You can watch it. There's a pop-up I button coming up right on your screen. Also, I've spoken to the owner of this motorcycle where I have asked him few common questions about his ownership experience. So make sure to watch this video. Now, coming back, the older Duke 390 produced 44 brake horsepower and 35 Nm of torque while weighing just 139 kilos. Whereas the new Duke 390 now weighs 10 kilos heavier as it needs to meet the newer emission norms, resulting for a heavier cat con. Also, this motorcycle now produces 0.5 horsepower less. That means it makes around 43.5 brake horsepower, but it makes it up at higher torque, producing 37 Newton meters in total. Now the result is it has the same 0 to 60 speed, that is 2.75 seconds, and 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds. But the higher weight and lower horsepower means its overall top speed has now reduced. Moving to chassis and suspension of both this motorcycle. Now the older Duke 390 gets the welded trellis frame, whereas the newer Duke 90 gets the bolt-on trellis frame, which means the chassis is been separated in two parts and gets bolted on right in the middle with the help of two strong bolts. Now this gives this motorcycle an advantage when it comes to crash, as if you want to replace the chassis, you only have to replace the damaged half of the chassis, whereas on this motorcycle you have to replace the complete chassis itself. Now moving to suspension of both the motorcycles, which are offered from WP, and practically they are the same. which means the ride quality on both this motorcycle are on the stiffer side, which makes it a little uncomfortable if you're planning to tour. But if your agenda is to attack corners or have a track day, then both the motorcycle are amazing performers. Moving to tires and brakes of both these motorcycles. Now both these motorcycles come with the sticky sets of bed sealers right from the factory. And moving to the brakes, now the brakes, like I've told in the earlier video, the older generation gets a 300 mm of front disc brakes, whereas the newer generation gets a 320 mm of front disc brake, which means it gives a much better feedback and feel. Now ABS comes standard on both this motorcycle, but the older generation you only have the option to either switch it on or switch it off completely. But the newer generation gets an additional supermoto mode, which means you can turn off the ABS for your rear wheel. So that covers most of the major components and the differences from the older generation to the new generation of Duke 390. But that's not all. This bike gets a complete makeover, more than aesthetics and the chassis. Like, let's start with the headlight. Now this is a complete LED unit headlight compared to the halogen unit from the older generation, and plus this gets a very beautiful angular DRL like this one, and it is a complete LED setup. Now moving further, coming to the levers are now adjustable. Both the clutch and the brake lever get an adjustment feature. That means you can adjust both the levers as per your finger reach. And moving further upwards from the lever, then you come to a fully color display information cluster, which offers a lot more information than the older generation. Like, let me demonstrate it to you. Now as you can see, you have a complete TFT screen as an instrument cluster on the newer generation of Duke 390, and which provides a lot of information on the main screen itself. Like, for instance, you have your tachometer here, you have your speed here, you have your gear indicator here, you have your engine temperature, then you have your fuel indicator, you have your odometer. Then moving toward the left side, you have your trip, you have your average consumption, you have your battery level and the date. You also have your fuel range. That means this motorcycle can go more 140 kilometers with this level of fuel in it. Next is phone signal. That means you can connect your phone to this instrument cluster and it will provide you information like who's giving you a call, and also you can change music tracks and increase or reduce volume if you are using any kind of a Bluetooth music system in your helmet. Now you can go through a lot of settings on this instrument cluster by using the key fob that has been given on the left side of your handlebar. And once you click set, that means you are entering the menu of this information cluster, and the first thing is basically the KTM My Ride. This is where your phone gets connected. That is your audio and your pairing for your mobile phone. And if you want to pair your mobile phone, that means you have to download the KTM My Ride app from the Google Play Store. And then next is the info. Then it gives you general info like the trip 1, trip 2 and the warning signs. If you have the quill switch, low fuel, battery indication, and lot more warning that comes up. And next is the motorcycle, that is the riding modes, mainly the ABS modes. Like if you can turn it off completely. Road means both the ABS are active, and supermoto is where the ABS for rear wheels gets switched off. Then moving down to settings, that is your favorites and your quick selector 1 and 2. Now this will take a little bit of a longer process, so if you want me to make a complete video on this instrument cluster, let me know in the comment box below. So right now I'm going to just run through the menu and the options that you have on this instrument cluster. And now once you're back to the menu, the last thing you find is the preferences. The preferences, your Bluetooth, if it's on or off, you can switch it off. It's currently on, so I can switch it off. Next is your shift light. That means when you want your shift light to blink at you, that means you want it at 6000 rpm, 8000 or 10,000 rpm, and how it flashes on you or it stays red. That is the mode that you can select. Then you have the clock, date, then you have the DRL, the unique DRL that I have talked about. So right now it's off, but the default setting is even if you keep it off, it will always stay on. and then you have in units, that is your distance, temperature, what units you want miles or kilometers. Same goes with the temperature, do you want Celsius or Fahrenheit, and your fuel consumption as well, how you want it, kilometers per liter. So let's put it to kilometers per liter. That's how I want to see it right now. Moving further down, you have the language option. Now this is an international bike, that means it's manufactured and assembled in India, but it is going to be sold all over the world, so that means it has multiple language options. Then is your service. Now currently this motorcycle is due for service, and I have just used 15 kilometers more than it should be run for service. Yeah, so next thing I need to do is get this motorcycle service. Then that is the extra function, KTM My Ride again. And going down is certification. Is basically what kind of a software update you are running on this motorcycle. Well, that's about it about this quick overview about the instrument cluster on the new generation of Duke 390. Now once you move down from the information cluster, you come to the fuel tank. Now this motorcycle has a higher fuel tank capacity, that is 13.5 liters compared to the 11 liters on the older generation. That means it has now become a little more touring friendly. Now once you move down from the fuel tank, you come to the seat. Now trust me, the seat is a very major improvement from the older generation, as the older generation has a very compact seat. Now the room on this seat has been increased, but the cushioning is still lacking on this motorcycle. That means you will definitely feel a sore butt after 50-60 kilometers, but now you have more room to move around, and plus the pillion seat has also become a little bit larger and more comfortable than the older generation as well. Now I have made a complete video about the first generation Duke 390, where I mentioned a lot of points that I personally don't like about this motorcycle, but KTM has been listening to its consumers and made a lot of improvements in this newer generation. Let us cover it one by one. Coming to the first point is the seating. Now this motorcycle has a very compact seat compared to what I've already mentioned. There is more room in the newer generation of Duke 390, but the cushioning is still missing. That means you'll have to go for aftermarket cushioning of those seats. So now moving to the next point that I mentioned that I did not like about this motorcycle, the way it sounds, as it sounds very similar to an auto rickshaw, and in this generation KTM has completely changed the way it sounds. It sounds now more throatier and bassier, and they have given away the underbelly exhaust to a side mounted exhaust, which also looks much better and gives much better appeal to this motorcycle. Now let's listen to how both the motorcycles sound one by one. Now I'll request my friend, the owner of this motorcycle, to hop on his motorcycle and switch it on for me. We'll listen to that motorcycle first and then switch on this motorcycle and listen to this one as well. Neeraj, please. Yeah, you see what I was talking about? Give it a little rev. More. Yeah. Not really a very good fan of that motorcycle and the way it sounds. Okay. And now it's time to listen to the 2017 generation of Duke 390. And let me also mention one feature about this motorcycle. Now KTM has given the one touch start. That means I don't have to hold that ignition switch till the motor cranks up. I just need to do this, and it starts up by itself. Now as you must have already noticed, this motorcycle sounds much more smoother and throatier compared to the older generation Duke 390. The third point that I mentioned about that motorcycle is the way it heats up. Now that motorcycle heats up a lot, especially in slow moving traffic. Now KTM has tried to address that issue on the newer generation as well, as now the radiator fan kicks in a little bit sooner and also runs much faster than the older generation, but I would say it has still not been able to completely solve the heating issue, as this motorcycle still heats up a lot. But yes, your feet will get barbecued slower compared to the older generation Duke 390. Now the fourth point that I did not like about that motorcycle was the on-off throttle transition. Now this motorcycle is very snatchy and very jerky, but KTM has completely solved that issue as this generation gets the ride-by-wire technology, which means the throttle transition is now way smoother than the older generation. Now this completes my major differences between the older generation and the second generation of Duke 390. Now as you know, KTM has also launched the BS6 variant, that is the 2020 edition of Duke 390, and the video on that motorcycle is coming up soon, so make sure you are tuned to this channel. Now moving further to the common question and answer of the second generation of Duke 390. Now as you know, I always make a list of questions, so that means I'm going to pull out my mobile phone and answer those questions one by one. Unfortunately, the owner of this motorcycle was not able to join us today for the shoot, but I've already spoken to him and I've got all the answers that is required for each question that I'm going to ask. So now going to question number 1, the riding experience in city and highway. Now like I mentioned, the seat room has increased. That means this motorcycle has gotten more comfortable than the older generation, but it still is a stiff ride, so hence you are gonna feel every bump and crack on this motorcycle as well. Now moving to question number 2, the fuel economy on city and highway. Now surprisingly, being a heavier motorcycle, it still manages to get the same fuel economy like the older generation. That means you get an economy of 25 kilometers per liter in the city, and if you're cruising at 100 to 110 kilometers per hour on the highway, you will definitely manage to get around 30 kilometers per liter. And moving to question number 3, that is the service interval and the cost. Now the service interval for this motorcycle is around 6 months, and the cost is similar to the older generation, that is between 3000 to 3500 rupees per service. And next question is heating issue, like I've already mentioned. Now I've been riding this motorcycle more than 2 weeks now, so the owner of this motorcycle has been very generous that he has lent me his motorcycle for as long as I want, where he has traded it with my older Pulsar 220. Yes, so in 2 weeks or let's say 15 days of experience, I have felt a lot of heating issues, but it is comparatively less than the older generation. That is one small difference. And moving to high speed stability of this motorcycle, oh, this motorcycle is very stable now. I've taken it to 140 kilometers per hour at the empty stretch of highway, and it still manages to hold the line as strongly as it holds the line in 80 to 100 kilometers per hour as well. Now moving to the last question, the bad points and the things he does not like about this motorcycle. Now he has mentioned only 2 points, that is the heating issue and the seat comfort. That means mainly the cushioning, so he's going to modify the seat as per his comfort. So yeah, that is only 2 points that he has complained about this motorcycle. Now that sums up my question and answer session about the second generation of Duke 390. That means you know what it is. It's time to ride this motorcycle.
So I'm currently riding the first generation of Duke 390, and followed which I'll ride the new generation of Duke 390 to talk about what all differences that I feel on both the motorcycles. So let's get to the highway first. Alright, so here we are on the highway. Well, definitely does not look like a highway because it's being Mumbai. You will find traffic no matter what. Today is a weekend, it's a Saturday, and still a lot of traffic in Mumbai. So, well, coming back to this motorcycle, the sitting position on this motorcycle is quite cramped. Like literally the distance between me and the handlebar is quite small. Plus I am fixed in one position as the seat is quite small and narrow. And riding in this position for a very long time, you are not going to be very comfortable on this motorcycle. So let's talk about the on-off transition. Now the speedometer is not working, so I don't know what speed I am doing at the moment, but I am in third gear. Now if I cut off the throttle, let me just overtake this auto rickshaw first. Okay, now once I cut off this throttle, now I want to give it again, and yeah, it is very jerky and very urgent. Well, the character of this motorcycle is completely mental. That is one of the good points about this motorcycle, because you never feel bored riding this motorcycle ever in your life, I feel so. And if you want to rev it, you can rev the shit out of it. It goes easily to the red line, and then you want to switch gear again, and again it will go to the red line of that. All the power of this engine lies in the top end, like after 6,500 RPM. That's where all the power kicks in altogether. So that means that is not much of a low end torque, and which also means that you won't be able to do low speeds at high gears, because this engine is not at all happy once you do that. Well, in that newer generation it has been still improved. Let's do one thing. Let's hop on the newer generation of the Duke 390 and talk about the improvements over this particular motorcycle. So here we are on the second generation of Duke 390, and let's turn it on. Okay, I don't know if you can hear it. The radiator fan has already kicked in, and it's very loud because it's running comparatively faster than the older generation that is right in front of me. And well, let's start riding. So yes, I can definitely feel the heat on this motorcycle, but it still somehow manages to keep it cool compared to the older generation. And the immediate feeling is how smooth this motorcycle is. The vibration compared to the older generation is quite less. Now let's try the on-off transition on this motorcycle. Now here we are zero throttle, and well, the throttle transition is way smoother than the older generation. It is completely mental on that older generation, but this one has completely tamed that snatchy throttle transition. And the next immediate difference is the comfort and the riding position. Now as you can see, the handlebar on the older generation was somewhere around here, giving me just this much room to play with, and the handlebar on this generation is more front bias. That means I'm sitting, my body weight is more towards on the front side of this motorcycle, giving me more front end feedback. And the room, I don't know if you can see in this camera, but definitely I can move around on this seat of the new generation Duke, and it is a lot of improvement compared to the older generation Duke 390. The character of the older generation in mental, that is for sure. Let's see if this one does that too. Let's rev it. Of course, ignore that service because it's going to go on the service soon. Let's rev it. Oh yeah, she can do. Oh yes, she still has that manic acceleration that the older generation has, but it is much more smoother than the older generation. And this information cluster is just so beautiful, lot of information. And I like I said, so see, the color on this information cluster has completely changed. It is on the brighter setting, that is the daylight setting, and the night light setting that you have already seen in the indoor when I was explaining the whole clusters for you. And the next immediate thing is the braking performance. As this one has a larger disc than the older generation, the front end braking feedback is phenomenal, and it gives you a lot more confidence to brake much more later than you would do on that bike. Oh, that heat can be felt right now. I can definitely feel that heat right now. And here we have a DJ rickshaw. Okay, let's see if we can find that empty stretch of service road so that we can do a side-by-side drag race on the both motorcycles. Wow, the brakes are fantastic. Super feedback for the brake. Okay, so this sums up my comparison video between the older generation and the new generation of Duke 390. Also the review about the new Duke 390. So it's time to say goodbye and see you soon.